Hey, I'm Jay Kumar, the BassBlaster, and this is your Abu Garcia REVO Top 5 Tips, Techniques, and Trends of the Month. Number 1. Using forward-facing sonar with a crankbait?
You really think I'm that crazy?
Yes, I do, if you're MLF Invitationals fisherman Jake the Snake Pliskin.
Plane crashed 7 hours ago near 8th Avenue. Did you see it?
No.
I mean Tennessee Hammer Jake Lawrence, who said some real interesting stuff about forward-facing sonar cranking in a real good post by Jody White on the Major League Fishing website. Here's a little from it. It's a lot like a jerkbait. You need to make the cast past them and get everything lined up right. Usually I do it around an object, a piece of brush or something. With roamers, it's difficult to get your bait lined up. That makes sense. Once you get that bait on your screen, let it float up, peel off a little line and let it float way higher than you think you need to. That fish is much more apt to come 10 feet above him than he is to go 10 inches below him. So start high. If the fish doesn't move, get it down closer and closer on consecutive casts. And actually, he's fishing it very similar to a jerkbait. Wind it past the fish, and once he turns and starts to come, I'll give it a few jerks. How crazy is that? So much for digging crankbaits on the bottom and deflecting them off stuff. Now Jake says he uses several crankbaits for this deal, but specifically mentioned the Bill Lewis MR12. Now MR stands for mid-range, and that bait of course goes down 12 feet or so. Now, that's pretty cool stuff, and if you're wondering about Jake,
you're crazier than a road lizard.
Whatever that means. Number 2. In the last 12 or 18 months, we've learned more about fishing the jighead minnow, Damiki rig, stroll rig, whatever you want to call it, than we have in the prior 50 plus years of bass fishing. We've seen all kinds of soft plastic minnows, jig heads, and lines, and rods and reels. And we've seen tournaments where roaming fish have been caught in the top 2 or 3 feet of water, so 1/8 ounce and even smaller jig heads came into play. But one thing we really haven't heard anything about is knots, except that braid to fluoro knot. Check out what Major League Fishing pro Greg Vincent says.
Let me tell you about what, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated knots in bass fishing, and that's the loop knot. First thing to do is just an overhand knot, make your loop. Let down maybe about a quarter inch or so, loop right there. Then we're going to grab our bait. In this case, it's a jig head. Run the line through the eye. Pull that loop down right above the line tie. We're going to pinch it between the thumb and forefinger right there. I've got it. Now I'm going to take my tag in. This is kind of like the old cinch knot right here, doing about 7 or 8 wraps. Going up the line. Helps if you keep a little tension right there, going towards the rod. I'm not sure how many I did there, but it feels like enough. And then we're going to go through that loop that we made right there. You can see it, that round loop. Run our tag in through there. Wet a little bit, and we're going to pull the tag in down, and that'll make your loop not quite so big. Just like that. Pull it too. We're going to snip off the tag here. Now, what that does is it allows your bait, your knot, to move freely on your bait no matter what angle your line is at coming to the boat. So your line's at a different angle on your cast. If you make a long cast, it's flatter. As you come to the boat, it's more downward, but your bait's always going to be running true because that knot can move on the eye just like that.
All right, now you can rig up and head to the lake like Master of Minnows, man. Number 3. Well, as we all know, the correct jig trailer is a craw, or at least a chunk.
Hello, chunk.
Because a jig is supposed to resemble a crawfish and therefore it needs claws. Or does it? Jigs that look like this and this have been popping up more and more in tournaments the last few years. Mostly in northern smallmouth tournaments, but not only. Usually those trailers are a Z-Man TRD, aka a turd, or a Berkeley Maxcent Lil General. Now smallmouth tournaments are in real clear water, so it isn't like the fish aren't getting a look at a craw with one clawless skinny arm. What's the deal? Well, smallie fisherman Travis Manson of Smallmouth Crush said in a recent BassBlaster email that smallmouths like that style of trailer at times because it mimics a goby well. Sometimes, apparently, when a goby can't reach the cover it's going for, it'll just freeze, and the smallmouths recognize that. Makes sense, and as we all know, sometimes less action and a different look make all the difference, man. So the next time you wanna think goby or turd, we just need a name for this deal. How about the Little Smoky or Beanie Weenie jig? The peg leg? Let me know your ideas, man. Number 4. All right, if you saw episode 94 of the Seafoam Top 5 of the Week in Bass Fishing, we talked about the Beast Coast Fishing OW Sniper jig. Now, one of the deals about that jig is that some of the colors come with way fewer strands, skirt strands, than most jigs. For a more subtle presentation, because sometimes that equals more bites. I got to thinking about that less strands equals more bites deal, and you know what? It reminded me of this and this. You see a pattern, maybe? Of course, they're different baits, but they all have that one thing in common: sparse skirt strands. Could that sparse or sparsity be key sometimes? I mean, the opposite is true, like when you need a Buckeye mop jig. So how about sparse? It's kind of like a bass fishing weigh-in.
Sparsely populated with intelligent life form.
Haha, just messing, peeps. By the way, there's a new version of that dice bait called the Raid One-Way Hybrid Dice. It reminds me of those War of the Worlds movie alien ships. Those sparse strand dice are coming after us, man. Number 5. All right, not sure what's going on here or how it's going to play, maybe in tournaments, but there seems to be a new emerging bait trend a little bit, which is small, hard swim baits.
Small.
It's probably been a thing in Japan, but not here till recently. And I'm not talking about BFS baits. The first thing I saw along these lines was the 95mm G-Crack Supaku Swimmer. Then Berkeley relaunched the Magic Swimmer, and the smallest size is 95mm.
It's so small.
Now, a few more similar size hard baits are out there, and of course they're way smaller than your traditional hard swim baits. Is this just another thing related to pressured fish and a more subtle presentation? Maybe, but then I saw this pic posted by Alex May at Tackle Tour.
Your mind's a blow.
Word! That bait is just 51mm, so about 2 inches long, and Alex says you actually do need a BFS or finesse bait casting setup to throw it. Now, I don't know about you, but
I ain't been there yet.
I ain't going anytime soon either. Keep an eye on this hard swim bait deal because
It's gonna work.
heck yeah, bro, anything will work once. All right, that's all I got for you this month. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Abu Garcia REVO. See you next month for the top tips, techniques, and trends. God bless you.